Why is a Hall of Famer who gave us one of the most entertaining moments of the last season and is worth a fortune just sitting by the phone, waiting for a call that may never come? We're talking about Russell Westbrook, a guy who isn't doing this for the money, but for the love of the game. He's an electrifying force, yet right now, the NBA seems to be moving on from him. He might enter the season without a team, a fate that seems impossible for a player of his status. This is the Hall of Famer's paradox, and it's a story we've seen before with legends like Carmelo Anthony and Allen Iverson. So what is really going on, and how did one of the most explosive players in history get to this point? Before we dive in, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss our next video, where we dive into another wild NBA mystery.
Right now, the only team that has publicly shown any interest in Russ is the Sacramento Kings. But even that is complicated. They don't have an open roster spot. For them to get him, they would have to trade either Malik Monk or Devin Carter. And why would they do this? This seems like the most Kings move ever. They're like the Chicago Bulls of the West, a team that just refuses to pick a direction. They're built around guys who are either in their prime or just past it. Players like Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and Domantas Sabonis. They're projected to finish 12th next year according to ESPN. It's like the Kings saw how LaVine and DeRozan couldn't get past the first round in Chicago and were like, yeah, let's try that, but in the tougher Western Conference and with them 3 years older. I'm sure that'll work out. And their solution to this is to sign a 37-year-old Russell Westbrook. It's a head-scratcher for sure. But what if Russ is actually making a smart move by waiting? What if he's letting a better opportunity find him? For example, teams with an open roster spot right now include the Warriors, Knicks, Sixers, and Timberwolves. What if Minnesota sees that their young point guard, Rob Dillingham, isn't quite ready to back up Mike Conley full-time? What if one of those other teams has an injury and needs point guard depth? The truth is, Westbrook is an all-time talent, and it only takes one team, one moment to change everything.
The biggest elephant in the room, though, is the Denver Nuggets. Last year, many predicted that playing with Nikola Jokic would do wonders for Russ, and for a while, it did. He was a perfect fit for their second unit, averaging 13 points and 6 assists, and even getting some votes for Sixth Man of the Year. He made a huge shot to send Game 1 of the first round to overtime and threw the game-winning pass to Aaron Gordon. But after the season, Russ turned down a $3.5 million player option, and the Nuggets basically said, "You're not going to get a better deal from us, so good luck out there on the open market." But why? We all know Russ is not super efficient and not great on defense. But the Nuggets learned something else about him. For every amazing play that he had in the first round, he had 2 or 3 terrible ones. In fact, against the Thunder in the second round, his game completely fell apart. He finished the series with a -92 plus-minus, and his stats were a painful 10 points a game, 2 assists, and 3 turnovers. He shot just 35% from the field and 22% from 3.
And that wasn't even the whole story. After Game 2 of the Clippers series, an ESPN report came out saying there was a heated exchange in the locker room. Aaron Gordon reportedly confronted Russ about his attitude, and when asked, one player said, "He's just so immature." Wow. Now, after that, Gordon did come out on camera to defend Russ. He said, "Russ is one of the most talented basketball players that has ever played the game of basketball. But that conversation wasn't for anybody other than our own group." Notice, though, that he didn't deny what the article actually reported. He just said it was unfair. The fact remains, there was a personality conflict, and a teammate called Russ out behind his back. That's the core of the problem. Russ might be labeled as a sixth man, but that is impossible for a guy like him. Whenever Russ is on the court, everybody knows it. He is super involved in every single play, good or bad. He doesn't have the DNA to be a role player. That's a good thing when you don't have depth, as the Nuggets' plan last year was to let him run the second unit and cook. But what if you have options and depth? Well, Russ ain't that guy.
This offseason, the Nuggets got deeper by adding players like Bruce Brown, Jonas Valanciunas, and Tim Hardaway Jr. They don't need Russ anymore.
So, the way Russ's career is winding down looks a lot like two other players. The first is Allen Iverson. He was still a force and a cultural icon in his 30s, but once his explosiveness faded, he wouldn't accept a lesser role. He landed on the Nuggets, the Pistons, and the Grizzlies, and it was a messy, painful exit. The other guy is Carmelo Anthony, a 10-time All-Star, but once his defense and ball movement didn't match the modern NBA, he also struggled in a lesser role and became a tough presence in the locker room. In fact, for a full year, no team would touch Melo, not because he couldn't score, but because he just didn't fit. The difference with Russ is that he has accepted a lesser role, but his style and personality don't fit that of a traditional role player. He's too much of a force. So the Hall of Famer paradox is this: a guy who's too good to be considered done, but too complicated to keep around. But what's really crazy is that the NBA's perception of Russ actually started a long time ago. Have you ever wondered how he went from a consensus superstar to a guy you can't win with, basically overnight? Well, Russ's reputation was linked to Kevin Durant for his first 8 years in the league. During that time, Russ won Rookie of the Year, was an All-Star 5 times, and made the NBA Finals. But once KD left for Golden State, Russ got exposed. One of the first people I remember saying this was a radio host named Colin Cowherd. He called Russ the convertible sports car of the NBA, saying he was glamorous, sexy, and eye-popping, but incredibly ineffective when it matters. At the time, that was a shocking statement. But just a few years later, everyone was saying it. It was common knowledge.
And speaking of Colin Cowherd, that dude also said the same thing about Carmelo Anthony years before. In 2013, he was a lone voice in the wilderness, saying Melo was a ball hog and couldn't run from who he was. At the time, that was a controversial take, but as the years went on, the stats and the facts proved him right. And the same happened with Russ. The narrative around him started to shift after KD left. People pushed back, just like they did with Melo. But as the years went on, the stats proved it. The Thunder traded Russ to start their rebuild in 2019. Since then, he has been on 5 different teams, about to be 6, and he's never stuck around for more than 2 years. Since KD left, Russ has had 7 first-round exits and has only made it past the first round twice. So Russ went from a champion to a complicated figure ever since KD left in 2016. And now, for the first time in his Hall of Fame career, the NBA might be ready to move on too. But speaking of careers ending, have you heard about the NBA starter in his prime who just walked away from the game, even gave back millions to his team just so he could leave the NBA? It's one of the most unbelievable stories in recent NBA history because almost nobody could imagine making that decision. And while plenty of people speculated, when the truth came out, it flipped the entire story upside down. Click here to watch our next video.